there's a line between owning who you are, owning your characteristics, and also leading from your heart and from your soul. I really believe in that, right? Instead of your head.
Welcome to Balancing Life's Issues, the podcast. I'm your host, Kai, and I'm here as always with CEO of Balancing Life's Issues, Wendy Woolner. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
We're doing okay. I mean, we're coming up on a year since Miles was born.
How quickly and slowly it goes at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, they weren't kidding when they said it goes by fast. But anyway, so yeah, we wanted to kind of give a little bit of a framework for the conversation you're going to have with Dr. Jen. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who this is?
I can. It's so interesting because, for those of you who've been following along, know we're past our 25th year here at BLI, which is just like Kai just said, it goes super fast and super slow at the same time. One thing that has always been incredibly important to me, and I think I would shout out my alma mater, University of Pennsylvania, is credibility. Making sure that we're accurate, making sure we are not in any way misleading anybody or attendants or public with any wrong information. And so I'm always looking for the scientific proof of what we talk about. 500 topics, what do we talk about? When I saw Jen speak, Dr. Huberty speak, I was like, that's it. That was her platform at the conference we met.
What conference was this?
Behavioral Health Tech Conference coming up again in November. I'm super excited about the audience that comes to that and credibility and working with Dr. Huberty and understanding the benefits of having a chief scientific officer. It's equally as important. If I said to you, Kai, we would run a business without a chief financial officer or without an accountant, you would say, what?
What are you doing? This is so cool, a conversation that you've been having with Dr. Jen. And it just kind of makes me think about all the misinformation out there, right? All the people that gather as facts based off of anecdotes, right? And here you're going straight to the source and you're using science to determine if the efficacy of what we do at BLI.
Yeah. And what's interesting about Dr. Huberty that I appreciate is that she understood from the beginning that we needed to learn how to do this for ourselves. We needed someone to teach us how to make sure we had the scientific mind, how to ask the right questions on evaluations, how to really understand, are we making an impact? Are the podcasts making an impact? Are these? Are we making a difference and can we measure it?
Yeah.
And we've just been so lucky to learn from her on how to rewire our brain to think that way.
Absolutely. And, so we'll get right to the conversation. And for those of you out there, if you want to learn more, just go to jenhubertyphd.com for more information and enjoy the interview.
Hey, Jen, it's great to have you here. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good, Wendy. How are you?
Good. So, before we jump in, I think before we even say who you are, let's just take a step back and sort of shock the group. And let's take back to how we met and how I approached you. You want to go ahead and tell our listeners the story?
No, yeah. I would love to, only because I've never been approached in this manner before, but I was very excited. So we met at Going Digital Behavioral Health Tech. Which is a pretty nice conference for the industry of digital mental health. I was on a panel, and I remember Wendy just showing her head, yes, 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 like on a lot of things that I was saying. I was like, oh, this girl likes what I have to say. And then afterwards, I come out of the room, and she comes up to me, and she stands in front of me. She has her business card in her hand, and I remember you go, I need you. I love what you do. I love the way you think. I need you. And I'm like, okay. And then you started telling me about some of the things that you thought I needed you for. And I was like, I definitely can help you. And that was it. I remember telling my husband, I met this cool lady. She wants me to help her.
And it's so interesting because I think you and I, if you do a Venn diagram, there's this middle ground about credibility. And how do we earn credibility? Not just as women CEOs, as mothers, as caregivers of the world, right? And and this is a good segue because that is who you are. You're this credible expert. You're a scientist, and you've earned it. So now it's a good way to say, let's do the formal intro. Dr. Jen Huberty, who are you?
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just keep this super brief, but I spent 20 years as a research scientist in academics. I did my last 10 years at Arizona State University, and I was funded by the National Institutes of Health, millions of dollars for the different research that I've done over the years. I always knew I didn't want to be there though, and I started working with non-for-profits and for-profits and looking at some of the programming or whatever that they were offering and testing it and trying to help them understand if these things were quote unquote working. So, for example, at a Boys and Girls Club, they're offering a program to help kids not be obese. Does it really work? Like, so I would test those things and I would say, hey, this isn't working and this is what you should do so it works if you're spending the resources on it. So I wanted to be in real world settings. So I did that from the start. I was very community driven, community based driven. What does the community need? I'll develop it around that. So then I had my own trauma. My daughter was born still at full term, and I turned to yoga and meditation. And I was already working in women's health and in cancer. And I said to myself, I'm doing a disservice if I'm not exploring some of the practices that are helping my own mental health, which were yoga and meditation. And I ended up using Calm. And then I reached out to them and I was like, I need to do research with your app in cancer patients and whatever. So they gave me some memberships and I used it for participants. And 2 years later, let's say, I flew myself to Calm and I gave them a presentation. I go, look what your app does. And I left and I went home, and a day later, literally, they were like, can you come back like next week? And this time we'll pay for it. So they flew me back, put me up, gave a presentation. The next thing you know, he wanted to be our director of science. I was like, absolutely, I want to be your director of science. I stayed with them and stayed in a university setting for like most of the time. And then the last year I left, I finally just said, I got a very large grant for $2.5 million to work on something with Calm and cancer patients. And I was like, I don't need to be in academia anymore. I can do these things in industry. And so I packed up my stuff and I left. And then I was at Calm like a year, I would say, on my own. I was there 5 years, but I was there a year outside of ASU. And I realized then that I was like, I should start my own business because all these companies want my help. I was getting outreach and I was scared, but I was ready to kind of move on to the next thing. And then I started my company and here I am.
Yeah, and we love this story because when we want to partner with people, we want to partner with brilliant people who have had an experience to show them how important it is what we do. And
Mhm.
you mentioned right before, you're like, well, my kids are sleeping and who knows what's going to
That's right.
happen. And
That's
that is
right.
so much, that's just right. I'm the empty nester, but I got my little puppy over here, so you never know what he'll do. So,
Those count
but
too. Yeah.
and so we've had some joys, challenges, and opportunities to get to know one another,
Yes.
and work together. And I always think it's interesting because, we are in a results-driven world, right?
Mhm.
It's what are the results? What do the results look like? And I
Mhm.
think results is such an interesting world, especially for a scientist. So tell me some things you've learned about the joys and the challenges of living in this results world.
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing working with CEOs and other companies is that they want to know the results, but there's so much more. So I think it's like this misunderstanding of results. So results can show up in different ways. It doesn't have to be a number that says this is significantly better than this, or this person changed significantly in this outcome. Those are all fancy, sexy numbers to use for marketing and whatever. Everybody does that. But what are some other results that you have in processes that you do? And what are other ways that you can show results? Because
Mm,
I think that companies don't think about it like that. So let's take like like marketing and marketing research. One of the first things I ever did at Calm was my most cited paper. We had 12,000 Calm users fill out a survey about Calm. It started with me sitting with the director of marketing, who's no longer there. She was such a doll, but she wanted to find out more for their marketing. And I was reading the survey going, you're going to miss so many opportunities of other things that you can say besides like who you're marketing to and how you're marketing it, right? And so she goes, okay, revamp the survey. I was like, really? So I revamped the survey, and it was like, in science world, this doesn't hang as well, but it's self-reported one time. How do you feel? How has it helped you? How has this impacted you? It didn't have to be an intervention. It didn't have to be a pre-post, a comparison to control group. It didn't even have to spend any money.
Let me stop you right there. I think one of the
Yeah.
lessons that I've learned that you just do effortlessly, because it's the way your brain works and not mine, is you know how to ask questions.
I guess. Yeah.
And you phrase questions, and you've learned how to ask a question. And that has become, we like to say, transferable skills, right? So I've learned from listening, just listening to you. I listened on the panel, and then the last few months of getting to know you about, oh, I could ask this question in a different way that would get me the answers that I want to listen to, not the answers I want. Because that's a leading question, right? That's like saying to your
That's
kid,
exactly
you did your
right.
homework, right?
That's exactly
But-
right. That's exactly right.
And you do it effortlessly. You immediately know how to
appreciate that.
reframe. And I think that's one of the reasons we want to have people like you on our team, is to say, wait a minute, I need to listen to the way to ask a question. So we always really like to give action steps. So you bring in a scientist to learn how to answer questions and to learn how to ask the question. That's
And
a
even
big
understand
takeaway.
the types. I think we get so narrow with the types of questions and the things that we're getting at. It's like, if you think about it, it's like most companies are like, I do this for these people. But
Yep.
you have to find out more information, because like, just because you say that's who you're targeting and that's what you're targeting doesn't mean that that's happening with your clientele. It also means that you can like grow your market. So like, that's how we use science to do that. It's like the classic example I always use is
Mhm.
Calm wanted to do some stuff with women, and women during, like life planning. And it's like, we could assume that Calm is reducing stress for pregnant women or women in that place. But I was like, shouldn't we ask the pregnant women, even though we think we're reducing anxiety and stress, shouldn't we ask them actually? And they were like, okay. But they were like, do it on your own, whatever. So I did a survey in like 150, 200, not too many women who were using Calm in that time. And guess what? It wasn't stress and anxiety. It was sleep.
I love it.
And it's like, so you're not even thinking, you're saying this is what we do, but
There's takeaway number 2. I think the smarter you get, there's a saying, right? The more you know you don't know,
yeah, that's scary.
right? But takeaway number 2 is, I was wrong. I got something wrong. And I think it's so interesting because, Jen, if we're honest, we're in a field, there's a lot of egos. We walk into a room, and if I go back for a minute to that conference, I think one of the things I noticed was, I'm very used to a casual, I'm sort of rebranding myself. My new brand is quirky and perky, right? And less about what I wear and more about me being this real intellectual. And so everybody's very appropriately dressed in the suits, which I haven't seen in decades, but I'm not. And you taught me how to ask the questions, how to listen for the answers, and how to really embrace what I was wrong about. Regardless that I've been doing it for 30 years. So we've got so many takeaways. I was wrong. And I need to relearn something. So you get this sleep information. What do you do with that?
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing is like, and then I say, well, we have a whole other way to market. Like, it's not like anxiety and stress isn't a thing. That's always a thing. But then you have this whole other thing to market if you want to get more, detailed. And that's kind of well, not kind of, it is how I help other companies, is think about their other markets that they might not even be aware of, right? Or it's the opposite. It's figuring out the market that you really want to So like I'm helping an app right now and they say they're an app for holistic well-being and they're tailored for this market. And I went to the market to ask them just something simple like, what does holistic well-being mean to you? Nobody even
Mm,
knows what it means. So this company is going to have to rethink how
I love
they
it.
coin their term. Like
I love it.
no one's going to listen to this word if you do that. So it's like being smart about what we're doing and thinking about it from that perspective.
But that's like the next takeaway, right? Like this idea of we can be scientists and smart and intellectual, but not pretentious. We can make it simple. We can make it easily to understand, and we can embrace it. And I do think you're a little scary, Jen. There's a little like air of like on this scientist that, immediately might have a little
That's funny.
yeah, well, I think we all, not just women, but all face a little imposter syndrome of how are we going to say to Jen, like, well, Dr. Huberty, I don't even know how to speak to you. So, how would you address that idea of either imposter syndrome or
Yeah.
even this idea of a little bit of intimidation? A little intimidating,
Yeah.
Dr. Huberty, a little intimidating.
Yeah. People tell me that, and I'm like, really? But I am very aware. But I will say, like, let's just for a second, being a CEO, like I have a few employees, whatever, but you are definitely a CEO. And so it's like in that role, it's like, there's a line between, I'm learning this as a leader now, and I've been working on it for years leading doctoral students, but there's a line between owning who you are, owning your characteristics, and also leading from your heart and from your soul. I really believe in that, right? Instead of your head. Because when you're leading from your head, that's control, that's ego, that's micromanaging, that's, almost like degrading, could be, whatever. But if you're leading from your heart and your soul, then you're tapped into who you really are. The things you're going to say are going to naturally come out kinder than when you're tapped into your head. But then at the end of the day, it can still have this premise of this is who I am, the ownership of who I am, because it's coming from the soul and not the head. It's coming from the heart and not the ego. So I've really been working on like, you know what? I might be intimidating. You could even call me abrasive. You could call me anything you want to. Number one, what do I identify with as my own human being, right? Because that's really what matters. I'm the one that has to go to sleep at night with my problems or no problems. That's, so how do I identify myself? The rest is their stories, their beliefs, their experiences, their responses, their reactions. But then I'm responsible from leading from my heart. And if I'm having a hard time getting there, it's my responsibility to get the support. Business coaches, mentors, all those things. I'm literally getting goosebumps as I say this to you because this is literally my practice right now. That I can be badass Jen Huberty, but I want to do it from my heart and not my head always. I want to do it from love and appreciation always. And that is something most of us never freaking do because it's scary. It's scary to do that.
I don't think there's anything left to say. When a scientist talks about their love and heart, then I think we've made the world a better place.
Trying.
So, Jen, it was an honor to meet you back then. I know we're going to be lifelong buddies and mentors to each one another. For those that are listening, go check out Jen on LinkedIn. Shoot her an email. We'll put all our contact information. And I just want to thank you for giving us some of your time today.
Oh my gosh, anytime, anything for you, Wendy.
This has been a production of Balancing Life's Issues with your hosts, Kai Sorensen and Wendy Wellner. Produced by me, Kai. Rate, leave a review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen so you can get brand new episodes as they drop. Got an idea for the show? Email me, kai@balancinglifesissues.com. Anything to add, Miles?